Hi, I'm Lucas from Quant Monitor. In this chapter, we're going to connect two ideas that are usually separated: crowd psychology and market structure. Because structure isn't something imposed on markets from the outside. Structure is something the crowd produces from the inside. Markets are often described like machines driven by rational decisions. But at the most basic level, that description fails. Markets do not act. Individuals do, and yet markets move. That difference is aggregation. When individual decisions interact under uncertainty, collective behavior emerges, and this collective behavior is not random. It repeats across time, instruments, and generations. That's the core idea. Market structure is not imposed externally. It is produced internally by the crowd. So, if we want to understand structure, trends, ranges, extremes, we can't look only at price mechanics. We have to look at collective behavior. Markets are social systems. Every transaction is a social act. It reflects expectation, imitation, fear of exclusion, and a desire for confirmation. No participant acts in isolation. Even when we feel independent, we still observe others indirectly, through headlines, through positioning, through volatility, and most importantly, through price itself. Price becomes a communication channel. It tells the crowd belief, doubt, conviction, hesitation. Structure doesn't emerge because everyone agrees. It emerges because reactions align under pressure, and uncertainty is the catalyst. When outcomes are unclear, people seek reference points. They look to recent price behavior, visible participation, and what seems to be working. As uncertainty rises, imitation increases. This isn't just irrationality, it's adaptation. Crowds become predictable not because individuals are foolish, but because information arrives unevenly and interpretation lags reality. By the time consensus forms, structure has already developed. At the level of individuals, emotions are noisy. Fear in one person is offset by confidence in another. Optimism meets skepticism. At the individual level, behavior cancels out. But at the collective level, behavior becomes directional. Structure appears only after aggregation. Trends, ranges, and extremes are not expressions of a single belief. They are expressions of collective alignment over time. This is why market structure can't be explained purely at the individual psychological level. It exists only at scale. Now, how do trends actually form? Trends do not begin with consensus. They begin with imbalance. A few early participants act with limited confirmation. Then price persists, and persistence converts observation into participation. The crowd does not move at once. It joins progressively. That progressive, delayed participation is what sustains trends. And here's the paradox. The more visible a trend becomes, the more capital is still uncommitted, waiting for confirmation. So trends strengthen not because everyone agrees, but because not everyone has acted yet. That's why trend phases often feel obvious, right before they become fragile. Recognition rises near structural maturity, not near structural birth. This is also why markets can keep trending longer than logic expects. The crowd is not a single decision. It is a sequence of decisions arriving in waves. Crowd behavior isn't symmetric. Fear and greed don't operate the same way. Fear is rapid, synchronized, and self-reinforcing. When fear spreads, people act together. They rush to reduce exposure. They copy what they see. They prioritize survival over opportunity. Greed is different. Greed is gradual, fragmented, and delayed. People add risk in stages. They need repeated confirmation. They scale in slowly. They hesitate, negotiate, and rationalize. This asymmetry creates structure. It helps explain why declines often accelerate faster than advances. It explains why bottoms can form abruptly, like a sudden air pocket, while tops often form slowly through distribution and hesitation. So structure isn't emotional chaos, it's patterned behavior. The chart here communicates a core market truth. Panic compresses time. Optimism stretches time. That time distortion is why volatility expands on the downside, and why recoveries often feel slow, uneven, and hard-earned. Crowd participation is finite. A trend can continue only while new participants continue to enter. When that flow slows, structure begins to degrade. And this is crucial. Price does not have to collapse immediately. It often loses momentum first. This phase is commonly misunderstood. Exhaustion is not reversal. It is loss of reinforcement. Markets stall not because belief disappears, but because additional belief cannot be mobilized. The crowd doesn't need to flip for structure to weaken. It only needs to stop adding. That's why structure weakens before direction changes. You'll often see moves that require more effort for less progress, rallies that feel tired, breakouts that fail more often, and volatility that changes character. From a structural perspective, the trend is already breaking down, even if the direction hasn't fully reversed yet. The crowd is the engine. When the engine stops receiving fuel, new participation, the vehicle may still roll forward, but it's no longer accelerating. Why do markets overshoot? Because crowds do not stop at equilibrium. Once participation aligns, feedback loops develop. Rising prices validate belief. Validation attracts participation. Participation reinforces structure. And reinforced structure attracts even more participation. This is not an error. Overshoot is the natural outcome of collective reinforcement. In crowd-driven environments, fair value becomes irrelevant. Structure continues until participation saturates or breaks. That's why extremes are not anomalies. They are the visible ceiling of crowd reinforcement. When you see overshoot, what you're really seeing is a loop between belief and price, where price becomes evidence and evidence becomes fuel. And the stronger the loop, the more fragile the structure becomes at the edge, because saturation eventually arrives. Here's another key gap: public perception versus structural reality. Crowds narrate markets in hindsight. Phases are named only after they end. Bull market and bear market are retrospective labels, not operational states. During transitions, perception lags structure, and that lag matters because the gap between perception and reality is where volatility expands. Media narratives chase outcomes. Structure evolves independently. So understanding markets requires separating what the crowd says from what the crowd does. And crowd psychology scales across time frames. Intraday traders form micro crowds. Swing traders form intermediate collectives. Long-term investors form macro crowds. The structure is the same, only the time frame changes. Persistence, exhaustion, overshoot, and breakdown appear at every scale. Time compresses or expands the pattern but does not change it. Structure is fractal because behavior is. Now, what does this mean for systematic traders? Systems fail when they ignore crowd context. Mechanical rules often assume stability. Crowds introduce instability. When participation clusters, volatility shifts, correlations rise, and strategies designed for equilibrium can degrade under crowd pressure. That's why crowd psychology is not a signal. It is environmental context. Robust systems adapt expectations to crowd state instead of trying to predict outcomes. And this is the conclusion. Market structure is crowd memory. Markets remember not consciously but structurally. Past crowd behavior leaves imprints that shape future movement. Support, resistance, trends, and ranges are memory traces of collective experience. Crowd psychology does not disrupt structure, it creates it. Markets are not random because crowds are not random. They are adaptive, imitative, and constrained by time. Structure is the visible residue of that process.